For my first proper video here on YouTube, I thought I'd introduce you to my lathe. This is the lathe you'll see in all of my videos. It's the only lathe that I turn on. And it's a Wadkin RS8. It's a pattern maker's lathe. This particular one was built in 1950, but the model was made from sort of the 1930s through to about the 1970s. So they haven't been made for nearly 50 years, and this particular lathe is, at the time of filming, about 75 years old. The design is perhaps a little bit old-fashioned. It has a kind of pedestal headstock, and then the bed bolts onto it. And they actually made three versions of this. This is the medium size, the RS8, and the 8 refers to the depth over the swing over the bed. So this is 8 inches here. They made an RS6 which had a shorter bed and only 6 inches here, and they made an RS10 which had 10 inches here and a longer bed. But because the beds essentially just bolt on and had a different set of legs that they could fix it to, they did make some kind of hybrid models, and I think the ultimate for me would be the RS8 bed length, but perhaps with the RS10 depth. And I know that Dave Dolby up in Yorkshire, he's got one of those hybrid models, but this is a pure RS8, so 8 inches here, and I can get about 5.5 foot between centres. So it's a big old lump of cast iron, and there's about 3/4 of a ton of cast iron in this, so it doesn't vibrate a great deal. It doesn't move around the floor, so it's rock solid to turn on, and it's a little bit low for me. I'm 6'1", so I've put it onto some plywood blocks, which just adds more weight to it, but also rises it up. So the centres are on mine is about 4 foot down to the floor. With those measurements, 8 inches here, there's also a feature which is quite old-fashioned that you don't see on lathes much these days, which is called a gap bed. So there's some bolts to undo, and then this whole section will lift out, and it increases the depth here from 8 inches to I think it's about 24 or something like that. So I can spin about 700 mil if I need to. So things like table bases and things like that, it works really, really well. I changed the bearings on not that long ago, and the bearings, obviously there's one here and there's one here, and they're about, I think I measured the spindle, and the spindle was about 25 inches or something. And those bearings, this is the bearing that's in it, they're about 3¼ inches across. So they're big old ball bearings. You can see on my hand there, they're big old bearings, and there's 2 of those, I say, quite far apart, so it's nice and stable, and I say you don't get any vibration from the lathe itself as you're turning. This is originally an 8-speed model. So the way this works, and this is slightly unusual compared to modern lathes, is the motor is down here. So this is a 1.5 horsepower 3-phase motor, and it has a long belt that goes up inside the casting, around the pulley, and back down the pulley there. And this speed lever, there's a mechanism that knocks the belt between 4 different pulleys. And what you do, you press this pedal down here, and that lifts the motor, so it takes the tension off the belt, and that allows you to sort of adjust this arm and to change the belt across. And originally this was a 2-speed motor, so this was on off, and this here was a little switcher that went between the slow and fast speeds. So that was originally an 8-speed lathe, but recently I gave it a 75th birthday present and a bit of an upgrade, and it's now got a VFD attached to it. So it's got a Mitsubishi VFD. So I've now controlled it all from up here from this little controller, and that allows me to go forward, backward, and adjust the speed to almost infinitely. And the pulleys really just give me a slightly different speed range and a bit more torque on the lower speeds if necessary. If we look through this kind of service hatch at the front here, you can see the belt. So it's a 2-inch wide belt, and it's joined with one of these little clips. So there's a pin that goes through it, so you can remove the pin and it opens to allow me to take it off and change it if necessary. But as I'm turning, you'll quite often hear a little tick, 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 tick noise in the background, And so if you ever wonder what that is, it's this joiner. As it goes over these big metal pulleys, it goes tick, and then obviously it hits the top one, it goes tick. And so it's 1,000 or 2,000 RPM, it tick, 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 tick all the time. This is about the lightest joiner I've found. Some are much more beefy and heavy than this and make even more noise, but this is not too bad at all. Let's fire it up and you can hear how this sounds. So if I just press forward there, you can hear it fire up. It's running at 44 Hertz, which is about 1,300 RPM. And so you can hear that ticking that's constantly running there. But that is a feature of these old lathes, that you get this constant sort of ticking noise. You get used to it as you're turning, and hopefully it won't bother you guys too much as you're watching my videos. The original tool rest that came with the lathe is this beast, but it's a bit of an odd shape. You can see how, here's the post, and it leans forward very quite far, which is good for getting you close to work, but it's not that comfortable to work, especially if you're used to using a more modern rest. So I've bought a set of robust rests in different sizes, and I keep those on a rack just back here. So I've got the I think that's 15 inch, 12 inch, 6 inch, and the 9 inch one just there. And just to sort of show you the quality of Wadkin engineering, this locks down just like a normal lathe does. It's on a cam lock action. But if you just listen to this, that's a very satisfying pop that just shows the sort of quality of engineering that you get on some of these old machines. The tailstock doesn't have a cam lock. This has a nut that goes through there, so I've got a sort of ratchet arm that locks that down. The reason that's slightly different is because this is a pattern maker's lathe. So one of the features of this is that it does have a sliding carriage that runs on this this sort of rack and pinion set at the front here. And what you can do is you can actually make this tailstock go slightly offset, and that allows you, using the carriage on the rack and pinion, to be able to turn tapers to very precise dimensions, which is a sort of a feature that's great for pattern makers, but not really something that I use a great deal these days. This rig on the back here is my duplicating fingers, and these fingers you can see sit on this bar at the back here, and they're set, you set them to the diameter of your work, and as you turn, they sort of jingle along on the back of the work, and when you get down to size, they drop through. And it means that as a production turner, I can set these up on a leg or whatever I'm making, and it means I don't have to use calipers more than once. So I set the original one using calipers, and then I set these up. I've got about 15, I think, on the back of the lathe here. You set those up, and it means that you can turn without having to stop and adjust and check calipers and things like that. So really great feature that's I've added onto this lathe. I do sell these duplicating fingers through my website, but I'll probably do another video just talking about the duplicating fingers, so don't need to worry about those too much for now, but you can check them out on the website if you want to. But this sort of rig on the back here is completely removable and adjustable, so it's set for a job that I'm working on at the moment, but it can be removed or adjusted so that the tailstock is inside it or outside it, or this part can move along as well. So very, very adjustable. One of the features of this lathe, which is really unique, and I use all the time, is that because you can take the tension off the belt with this pedal down here, it acts kind of like a clutch pedal, and there's also a brake. It means that without stopping the lathe, I can stop the work to sort of check my progress. So if I fire up the lathe here, I'll see if I can show you how to do this. So that's the lathe running, and if I show you that I put my foot on this pedal, and that lifts the motor up, and you can hear the belt flapping, and I put the brake on, and it means that the motor's still running, you can hear that, but it means I can stop and check my work, have a look at what I'm doing, make sure that it's, you know, nice and clean cut and free from scratches or whatever. And then once I'm happy with it, I just take my foot off the pedal there, and the lathe runs back up to full speed. So a really useful feature which you just don't see on modern lathes, and probably isn't practical to put on modern lathes, but because of the way the speed change originally worked on this lathe, it's a great little feature that I use all the time. You can technically turn outboard on these lathes. So there's underneath this cap here, there is a spindle thread with a left-handed thread, and that, if the lathe was in the middle of the room, you could turn something essentially down to the floor. So probably nearly 8 foot in diameter on this, but I have it positioned against the wall, excuse me. So I don't use the outboard. The biggest I can turn is if I remove the gap bed, I can spin something, you know, essentially back to the wall, but that's as big as I can go on this lathe with this particular setup. But it's a fabulous lathe, and I say it's been running for 75 years so far. I've had it for about 15, and hopefully, touch wood, it should keep me going for a good few years yet. I hope you've enjoyed the tour, and I'll see you in my next video.